Hi, my name is Sabrina, and I worked with Kaylin and Tony on this week's 2+1 project. We decided to do our project on the review essay that was drafted in the American Business Law Association Journal. The article, the title of the article was Enron, A Brief Behavioral Autopsy, and it was written by Ed and Molly Smith, Centennial Professor of Business Law, University of Texas at Austin. As outlined by Kaylin, we really walked away from this review with two key takeaways. The article really provided a good breakdown of the Enron case, but what the author was really trying to illustrate in the materials is how they believe that there is a shortfall in the way U.S. law and the way business schools and law schools teach certain legal concepts. And it was interesting to learn how these strategies have been applied historically and how they have merged or morphed over time. I learned by kind of doing a little more research that a lot of today's legal analysis hinges on concepts and teachings that came out of the Chicago University Law School. More clearly stated, it's called the Chicago and Law Economics History taught in the Chicago Law School. And back in the 1930s, law was taught predominantly from a legal theory. And so it was very black and white from a legal stance. And then by the late 1930s, different economic professors began to kind of dissect certain cases that were being presented, either whether it was from the Great Depression or from just changes in society that was requiring a deeper review of the issues that were being presented at the time. And it became evident that just by that looking at certain issues from a legal standpoint wasn't sufficient. And so they integrated economics into a lot of legal theory, which has become really the linchpin of today's analysis around a lot of legal issues. So the author in this particular writing is expressing their concern that they believe it was illustrated in the Enron case that looking at these issues from just the legal and economic standpoint also has shortfalls now. And I think the key takeaway is that, over time, as we move into more complex situations and scenarios such as Enron, the theories really need to kind of be reassessed. And that's what the authors of this writing is doing. They're challenging the way we dealt with legal issues in the past. And what is being introduced here is this concept of behavioral decision theory. And so, as outlined in the article, the 2003 essay, Enron, A Brief Behavioral Autopsy, written in the American Business Journal, the Enron case is a good example of how legal and economic theory is not sufficient to analyze the full scope of today's corporate and legal challenges. As the authors illustrate in the article, a major shortfall of legal and economic theory is the presumption that people act and behave rationally and ignores the behavioral research, including the theory of confirmation bias. which is a tendency for people to believe what they want to believe. Um, so the key takeaway that I'm going to talk about is really the second one, which I think the article on the Enron case in the American Business Journal makes a strong argument as to why behavioral decision theory is valid and important in analyzing, predicting, and avoiding these type of legal and ethical issues and crisis, such as what we saw in the Enron case in the future. After all, if the existing prevailing concepts of legal and economic theory hinge on this concept that people act rationally, I agree that that just doesn't seem right and seems like a huge kind of mishap in that concept, because obviously the people, Kenneth Lay and Jeff Skilling and then Arthur Andersen and the CPAs and you name it, everyone involved were not acting rationally in the Enron case. I also believe that the theory of confirmation bias is enlightening and is likely to have an impact on how we view many issues, including how quickly people and societies adopt new theories such as behavioral decision theory. I believe this concept of confirmation bias needs to be carefully assessed when scholars are debating certain issues to ensure that their biases are not hindered or are not hindering progress when it relates to furthering the study of these type of important concepts.